Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this second live stream episode of Dogman Encounters. Just like the first one, we have a special guest here tonight. Of course, I'm talking about Brian Terrell, who's been a Dogman researcher for years now. And I got to brainstorming about it, and I thought, who can I bring on here to answer your Dogman related questions? Well, it didn't take long before I thought, you know what? I know just the guy. Brian Terrell. So I reached out to Brian, asked him about doing this, and thank goodness he said yes. So here we are. So if you have any questions for Brian, please be sure to type them in all caps. That way I won't miss them, or at least hopefully I'm not going to miss them. But anyway, saying that, let's get Brian in here now. Brian, thanks so much for coming.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks so much for doing the show. We really appreciate it. Now, besides being a Dogman researcher, Brian, you've also got your own YouTube channel. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I started Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations probably, I don't know, it's probably been 4 years ago. And we've been kind of basically what it's really about. It's not really about content creation or generating revenue. It's basically we're just taking you guys along with us whenever we go out and do field investigations. It's not any, there's no hype. I mean, I don't really, everything on there is just honest. It's exactly what we're really doing. The only thing I really edit out is cuss words. So if you get my drift, but it's just really us being us when we're out in the field, and you get to follow along with us, and that's what it's really about. And I don't know. I mean, we occasionally dabble in a few other things, but that's really it. You guys come along with us, and sometimes I do interviews. If I'm lucky, I'll get people to do interviews with me or on-site interviews, and I'll go out and interview eyewitnesses. But that's really what Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations is all about, at least on the YouTube aspect of it.
Yeah, I can only imagine all that you have to do to keep this thing afloat. Yeah, that's a lot of work. When did you conduct your first Dogman investigation?
Hmm, that's a good question. I know. Well, my first Dogman encounter, of course, was my own, but I think well, that's a good question. Um, let's see here. I know some of the older ones. I did some interviews. A lot of the Dogman encounters that kind of come across my path seem like they're on private land. Um, Most of the ones that I get are private, not public land. So it's kind of hard for me to actually go out there and do an investigation without the property owner's permission. I've been out and investigated a couple recent. Well, I don't know which one was the first one, to be quite frank with you. I've talked to a lot of people over the phone, but getting the opportunity to go out and actually investigate an area and spend time in an area where there's Dogman encounters is it's kind of tough. A lot of people run into Sasquatch on. Hold on a second. A lot of people are running into these Bigfoots on public ground or wildlife management areas or national forests and stuff like that. But it really isn't that way with Dogmen. With Dogmen, people are running into them. You know, it almost seems like not on public ground. I mean, it makes it a lot more difficult. So the places that I do get to go, which are kind of unusual and rare, I usually don't get to stay too terribly long. It's more like an invitation to come out. And a lot of times people are just asking me to come out so I can do an interview. So I'm actually actively looking for some places that we can go to actually do what I consider to be an on-site Dogman investigation. We've got a lot of places that we can go for Bigfoot, investigations, but the Dogman thing seems to be a lot more elusive, because just trying to actually pinpoint them and get them down to a certain area, man, it's tough. But we have gotten to go out and interview a few people occasionally. And one was an anonymous lady down in southeastern Oklahoma that we went out and spent some time with. Nice lady, but not only did she have Dogmen on the property, she also had Sasquatch on the property. So that kind of, in a nutshell, it kind of made it more difficult, because when the Dogmen were around, the Sasquatch weren't, and vice versa. So it kind of complicated things and made it difficult to tell what was Dogman activity and what was Sasquatch activity, vice versa, So, yeah, whatever that's worth.
I'll put this out there. If I had a Dogman encounter that I wanted to be researched, and I had my choice, of course, of all the Dogman researchers out there, you would really be right there at the top of the list of who I would reach out to and ask to come out to investigate. Because, yeah, I mean, just the way you go about it, I mean, you're no nonsense, you're obviously ethical, and you've got a lot of qualities that I think eyewitnesses would really be drawn to. So, yeah, I can't say enough good things about you.
Appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome, but yeah, just telling it like it is. Well, it looks like we have the first question for you from Elaine Isabel. And the question reads, Brian, how big was the black dogman you saw running across the field?
Way too big. It was a little ways away, so precision is not really an option, but I about imagine that if I was standing right next to it, it would probably be, right up around nose high, just below my eyes, probably so 5.5 feet, 5.5 foot tall at the head. It was big. I'm gonna I'm gonna estimate. Judging weight's kind of tough, but I'm gonna say it was 500 pounds or more. That's what I've always kind of stuck to, because I know what some of these young calves weigh, and kind of make a rough estimate. But it was big. It was shockingly big, big enough that I knew that it wasn't some common dog. And like I said, I've told people before, I thought it was some kind of wolf hybrid dog that had gigantism for years. This is the only thing I knew. But I tell you this, it was not something you'd want to run into, just out in the woods. It was just way too big. Mm.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like my kind of party at all.
No, it shocked me. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Yeah, and for good reason.
Mm.
Well, looks like we have another question for you from Tea Time with Tiffany. And Tiffany wants to know, what's your opinion on dogmen being used as super soldiers?
Well, I don't think there's any. The government's capable of anything, and the government. There's different factions within the government. So, my personal belief is that the government has probably gotten their hands on a few of them. They've probably, cloned them or whatever, and used them for multiple purposes. There's no telling what they can dream up. Um, I think it's possible. Now, do I believe that they're breeding, hundreds of them? I don't know. I think that's stretching it. I mean, at most, they might have like a small team of these creatures that they use. How they control them, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I know they're real. And if I know they're real, the government knows they're real. And the government is going to try to manipulate, weaponize just about anything that they can come across. I mean, it's almost kind of their duty to do that kind of work, because if they don't, someone else is going to do it. And so I guess I'd rather our government do it than somebody else's government. But at the same time, I don't like secrets, but it's a tough call. But yeah, if I had to put money one way or the other, I'd say, yeah, they've probably got some of these. I just seriously doubt that they've got thousands of them. Maybe, small group or something like that. I mean, how would you control something like that? I mean, it'd be tough.
Yes, it would be. Yeah, there are a lot of problems that would come along with that. And you don't think our government would do anything shady like that, do you?
Every chance they get.
Yeah, no doubt, unfortunately. Well, I've got another question for you from Toby McKimmy. And Toby wants to know, can dogmen mind speak if they choose to?
I believe they can. I've gotten several reports from people that have claimed to have received messages similar to that of people that get messages from Sasquatch. I've actually talked to a couple of people, and they've had actual conversations within their head with these creatures, and I believe them. I think that mind speak isn't as crazy an idea as what people think. People do it, and if people can do it, why can't other creatures do it? To me, it just kind of makes common sense. We're always kind of running on this thought process, that we are the alpha species on this planet, but what if we're not? What if there's other creatures capable of this kind of stuff? Um, I would have to say, yeah, mind speak is definitely real, and I don't even think it's really a supernatural thing. I mean, to be quite honest with you, it's actually fairly common in human twins. I mean, they communicate without talking all the time. So if you've ever lived with twins, identical twins, or grown up with twins, you know this. It's actually not that unusual.
I used to think that mind speak and things like that go along with it were just nonsense when I got into this, but
Mm-hmm.
there are just way too many credible eyewitnesses out there who report experiencing things like that to just dismiss it. So I think there must be something to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there. When I first got in, I was just like, whatever. But it's like once you hear these people, these random people, and they call you and they tell you these stories, and and a lot of times they'll be like, well, I normally don't tell people this part, but there was this other thing, and after you get more and more people telling you the same basic thing, you're like, there's got to be something to that. And I think everybody, that hosts a show or does research or gathers stories, we all go through that. There's a learning experience, because when you start pooling the data, patterns start to emerge, and that's when it really gets interesting.
Yes, it does. That rabbit hole, something else.
Yeah, deep.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I've got another question for you from Violin Makes Me Cry. And they want to know, Vic and Brian, do you think dogmen, Bigfoot, and other cryptids and or other entities do bump into your life when there's a low point in your life, death, illness, depression, etc.?
You want me to go first?
Please do. This is your show, so I'm going to be throwing all these questions at you.
Well, um, every once in a while, you'll kind of pick up on that. Um, I've had people reach out to me before, and they'll talk about, how this creature showed up, and how their wife was sick or had cancer or something like that. And, I'm not going to say that it's all the time, you know, um, But yeah, it seems to be, I don't know yet, but I'm open to that idea. And for what it's worth, the thought has crossed my mind before because I have known some people that seem to be going through a lot and then that happens. And my my two dogman encounters happened roughly within a year of each other during a time when I was fixing to go through a divorce, whatever that's worth. So,
No, I believe it. It's one of those patterns I've noticed over and over and over again where it sure seems like there's something to that as well. If you are feeling low or you're upset about something, it seems like that does increase your odds of having an encounter with the dog man. I could be wrong about that, but sure seems to me like there is a pattern, just like you said.
mhm. Maybe it has something to do with lowering your vibrations and maybe they're attracted to that kind of stuff. It's hard to say. It's hard to say.
That it is. All right, I've got another question for you from Nate Dew, and Nate wants to know what the most usual locations of dogman encounters are. What state?
Oh, yeah, like State of the Union. Well, I really only specify in Oklahoma and southern Kansas, but from what I've seen, there's a whole lot of them in basically like the central part of the states. It seems like the further you get towards the East Coast or the West Coast, it almost seems like you get less and less reports. They're still there, but it seems like from what I've seen, you start up there, of course, in Michigan, and you start trickling down, you know, uh, laying between the lakes, and then you get over here into Kansas. I personally haven't heard of a whole lot of them, a whole lot of reports of them being over in Washington State, Oregon. I mean, you'll get reports, but just not a lot. Northern California, Colorado. I don't think I've ever heard anybody. I've never heard a Colorado dogman report. I'm sure you have, Vic, but I can't. I'm drawing a blank on that one. But it seems like I hear a lot from Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas. And you kind of keep just kind of right down the middle of the central United States. It seems like that's where a lot of them seem to be. I honestly believe that Oklahoma is kind of a hot spot for those type of creatures because I've got like 200 and I think I've got like 230 Bigfoot case files and I've got 65 Dogman case files. So when you sit down and you look at that, I mean, I've got like one Dogman report for every 4 Sasquatch reports. And that's actually pretty high if you compare other states with their Bigfoot. And most of them have like 10 times more Bigfoot reports than they do Dogman reports. So I think there's a lot in this particular area, and especially down into Texas and Louisiana. There's just a lot of good habitat for them.
Yes, there is. Yeah, to say the least. Looks like tea time with Tiffany is more of a comment than a question. She says, or said, you would almost have to raise them from pups to train them like that. She was the one who posted that question about the super soldier program.
Mm. Well, sis, when you get your hands on a litter of those, you let me know. I'll come pick one up.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. A little too interesting. All right, I've got another question for you from Mama Said, and she wants to know, why do these dogmen sometimes smile at folks?
Oh, oh, that's the tough one right there. You know, my grandpa used to have this dog named Tippy, and Tippy was always doing that. He's always just smiling, baring his teeth, and you could tell he was just smiling. And if you was to take human characteristics and put them on that dog, you would describe that dog as just having an ornery look. And, you know, I think as humans, we naturally kind of do that. We try to take human characteristics and apply them to animals. I don't know that you could really say, or that it's even fair to say, that they're actually smiling. Smiling is something we do. They have a completely different face, a completely different structure. Um, are they smiling? I don't know. But if they are, it would kind of indicate that maybe they're devious or up to something or enjoying the moment, if you will. I don't know. We don't have any real evidence. I think the smiling thing could just be a natural face. I don't know, like a relaxed state or something for them. I don't know. Who knows? I've seen regular canines do it. I've got a Pomeranian that looks like he's having a wonderful day every time you see him. Maybe that's a natural thing for them. I don't know.
I've seen that too when a dog smiles at you, and yeah, it's awfully creepy.
Yeah.
It has an
Yeah.
effect on you.
Hmm.
All right, I've got another question for you from Magnus, and Magnus wants to know, why are dogmen throwing animals at people's homes?
Animals?
You
Is
know,
that what?
like how they throw cats and
Oh,
raccoons or
well,
swamp kitty.
I wouldn't hold that against them if they throw a cat. I've never been a cat person, but yeah. Uh, throwing them that's a new one on me. If they're doing that, I don't think they're doing that around here. I don't have any reports of dogmen throwing animals at someone's house. Um, uh, no, do you know of any, Vic?
Oh yeah, yeah, I fielded plenty of reports like that where they've thrown cats and swamp kitties, raccoons, and other animals at homes. Just, I think, to try and get the people inside to come out to take a look. But they do that,
But it's
unfortunately.
not rocks, it's animals.
Yeah, definitely animals. Normally it's cats, but they have thrown animals at homes as well that weren't cats.
Huh. Seems like a rock would be easier to catch.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't
Hmm.
think they have any trouble catching, you name it, whatever it is.
No doubt. They're pretty fast.
Yeah, that they are.
I don't know. I'm
All
drawing a blank on that one.
Oh, that's okay. I've got another question for you from Slobodan Milosevic, and he wants to know, do you believe normal dogs slash wolves have mind speak capabilities?
Well, um, sometimes I wonder if a lot of animals don't have it. Um, you'll see animals acting in packs, doing things without making vocal gestures. I've often wondered if mind speak isn't really common in the animal world, and maybe it's just something that we have either lost our ability to do or don't do for whatever reason. Um, I would say that if you look at their behaviors and the way they interact in pack formations, I would say they're. It almost looks like they're demonstrating it. Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with that. Yeah.
Well, they might not be making noises, but they definitely have the means to communicate somehow between each other. Maybe it's body language, I don't know, but yeah,
Hmm.
there's something there.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Hmm.
All right, I've got another question for you from Tim Spoon, and Tim wants to know, do you think dogmen have an ET territory or home? I guess he means a home territory or home, or do they just roam and travel all the time?
Boy, I've spent some time talking about this with my guys and looking at some of the reports, and I don't get a whole lot of reports of dogmen that are in one area and they stay there. I only know of one story that a lady claims that they're on her property all the time. And other than that, most of the people, even the ones that have them occasionally around their house, excuse me, they will tell you that they're there for, a month or something, and then they're gone for like the rest of the year, but they keep coming back, or they come back twice a year and they'll stay for a couple weeks and then they'll leave, which would kind of indicate that they are, kind of migratory. So I'm really not of the opinion that Sasquatch migrates very much at all. But when it comes to these dogman creatures, I totally buy into it that they're just kind of moving around and kind of changing areas. Maybe they're managing their food resources. Maybe they don't want to deplete one area, so they'll hunt and kind of take from that area for a little while, then they'll move on, they'll go somewhere else. um, it kind of would make a lot more sense. But I don't have any evidence that they are moving around constantly. But it would kind of fit the randomness of the sightings, and that would kind of go a long way to explaining that. And it might also, it's kind of why it's problematic for me as a researcher trying to pinpoint where I need to look for them. So, yeah, I would buy into that, but I don't have any evidence pointing in one direction or another on that one.
You raised some really good points. I've got a comment. It's not a question, but it's a comment from Mike Smith. And he says, God created, but demonically driven. And he just might be right. It's hard to say and hard to know. All right. I've got another question for you from Fat Tires Big Feet. And they want to know, did the dogman you saw have human-like legs or backward like a dog? Backwards like a dog.
Yeah, both of them had the canine legs. I got a pretty good look at, well, both of them really, but the one I got to see running away at a 3/4 angle, so I could kind of see his legs kicking out. They're definitely canine. So, but the back legs were, I think, shorter than the front legs. At least that's the way it appeared to me.
That makes sense. All right, I've got another question for you from Elaine Isabel. And Elaine wants to know, Brian, what's the scariest dogman encounter you've heard of?
Well, I was talking to a guy, an eyewitness, recently that I did an interview with, who is kind of a wild story. But he said that he was approached mentally by what he interpreted as an elder dogman, perhaps a pack leader or something. And this dogman communicated a message to him that he and his people of his tribe, which this was a reservation type setting, needed to make sure that them and all of their children were, inside the house after dark and not to come out, because his pack was going to be hunting in that area for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, I know that's getting kind of into the woo there, but he was very sincere, and they had a meeting, and he told his people, and they did exactly what they were told. But in my opinion, that's kind of a scary situation to think that these creatures run in big packs and they hunt in a specific area, and that apparently, we are in some enough mortal danger whenever they're in our area that an elder would reach out to a Native American spiritual advisor and tell him, hey, you need to keep your people out because we don't want any collateral damage, And to me, that's just like, well, what do the rest of us do? What happens if we just happen to be, going out to the barn or something like that? And especially when, because I do believe that they kind of run in packs. I mean, I believe there's solo ones, there's individuals, that sometimes are alone. But I think for the most part, they're probably running in pack groups. You just don't see them. And to me, that's kind of a scary thing to think that, there's not just a creature like a dogman out there, but that they run in packs. How big are the packs? That's to me, that's the scary part. When I saw my first dogman, I thought it was just a lone, strange animal that had gigantism, and I didn't think it would live very long. I figured that it would be put down very quickly. And one of the biggest shocks was when I realized that there was actually a breeding population of these things. I mean, there's a huge difference between one dog man and 12 of them. And I think that's the scariest part to me, is that they may not be alone and probably are not alone.
If that really happened, that warning, that raises a lot of questions, and I can't think of any questions that are good.
I know. When he told me about that, I was just like, whoa. I didn't even know what to say. It's just kind of like, wow. But it's good when you have somebody that is receptive to that kind of stuff. Most of us, I think, have kind of turned that part of our brain off when it comes to that kind of stuff. But he was one of those people that he knew that these creatures were out here, and he was more in touch with his spiritual side. And he had been in communication with other creatures, and they just thought it would be prudent, I guess, in an effort, like I said, to kind of avoid problems. I'm just going to word it like that. Wow. What do you make of that one?
Yeah, wow is right. And life is a lot more comfy and convenient when you turn that side of your brain off, and you don't have to worry about Dogmen and Sasquatch and who knows what else when you're heading out to the barn or you're even near the woods. So it's understandable why so many people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've
Must
got
be.
another. Yeah, must be nice. I agree. Well, I've got another question for you. It's from Luke Neely. And Luke, you didn't type your question in all caps. Luckily, I caught it. So I'm going to ask this. But anyone, if you have questions for Brian here, please be sure to type them in all caps so I don't miss them. Well, having said that, Luke's question is, Brian, do you think the scent of fear that a human produces in an encounter determines the level of aggression and or violence in that encounter?
Mm, that's a really good question. Hard to say. I haven't, when 99.9% of all of the case files result in the human living through the story, right? They very seldom will ever even touch you. Rarely ever happens. Most of the time, if they wanted you, they could have got you. So, do I think that fear is a trigger? No, I don't think it's a trigger. Um, it may trigger some kind of natural primitive response in them, but obviously they're not acting on it. So I would have to say probably, I'm sure they pick up on that, but I don't think they're acting on it, is what I'm saying. Most of these creatures show a lot of restraint, and why they have so much restraint is kind of a mystery. Maybe they don't like the taste of human meat. Maybe there's a spiritual barrier from the Almighty that they're not allowed to cross. Maybe there's another reason that's outside of our realm of understanding. It's hard to say, but I don't think it's if I'm sure they probably can pick it up, but I just don't think that it's definitely not triggering them to attack us. Let's just put it that way.
All right. Well said. I've got another question for you from Shauna Hinsala. And Shauna's question is, do you think the lack of dogman sightings in Washington and Oregon has anything to do with the Sasquatch population?
I've gotten a couple of reports where people will say that it seems like when the dogmen show up, the Bigfoot will leave, and then when the dogmen leave, the Bigfoot will show back up. Um, I could kind of see that. I'm not one of those people that subscribe to the whole, fantasy thing about the dogman and the Bigfoot going WWF on each other. I personally find it kind of annoying. We really don't have any evidence of that. It's just something that just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And I mean, people would definitely pay to see that on pay-per-view, but it ain't really happening. So maybe they're just professional. Maybe it's a professional courtesy thing. I do know of a few stories where people have claimed that both species are living on a particular piece of property full time, and that they live in peace. And and there's been other stories of them interacting and stuff. But it would just kind of make sense in a way that if you've got a pack of dogmen and and a clan of Bigfoot working the same area, that's going to be counterproductive. It'd probably just be easier for one or the other to go and move off into a different location, just for just being intelligent. So that's kind of what I think it might be. But again, I don't have all the answers. But sometimes when you've been looking at the reports long enough and listen to the stories long enough, you can draw some conclusions. But even then, every situation is going to be different. But I think for the most part, they tend to avoid each other. But I think it's just like people too. I mean, some people just don't get along.
Just imagine all the demands it would put on a certain area in the woods and a forest if you had both Dogmen and Sasquatch living there. I can only imagine.
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, it just and like I said, I think if it's anything, it's about managing food resources. So,
Yep, you're probably right. I see a couple more questions that are not in all caps that I almost blew right past and missed. So, yeah, like I said, please, if you have any questions for Brian, please type them in all caps so I don't miss them. All right, looks like the next question for you is from No More Funland, and they want to know, do dogmen seem as prevalent in Canada as the USA?
there are Canadian reports of dogmen. Um, I think there's a lot more Bigfoot reports further up north. But I don't think it's. I mean, just from what I've heard, I'm just kind of judging on what I've heard. But what I hear and what I know is kind of biased because Canada is kind of out of my wheelhouse. I'm just one guy. I just primarily focus on one area. And so a lot of times if a story or something like that or a podcast is about something that's out of my area, I either, I might listen to it, but maybe I don't, try to remember the details, and I definitely don't write it down like I do with, local reports, anything from Oklahoma or the surrounding states. Um, so I don't really know, but I can tell you from what I've seen, it seems like there's a lesser degree of dogman activity if you get up into Canada. But a person that was from that area that was a researcher would probably be a lot more knowledgeable than me on that one.
All right. Got that one taken care of. Got another question that is not in all caps from Fuzzy1Z. And they want to know, or they're saying, "Hi, Vic. Hi, Brian. Hey, Fuzzy. Are there a lot of dogmen in Mexico?"
Oh, that's now that. So there was a guy that posted a question on your Facebook page in relation to dogmen being uh, possible chupacabras, and I think this might tie into Fuzzy's question. Um, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, that they may be confusing, people may be confusing the two with each other. And it really didn't hit me until a couple months ago, about 6 months ago. I was out at one of the local lakes out here where I kind of do some research occasionally. And I was at a Bigfoot spot, and I was down there looking for footprints and ran into this fisherman guy. And I did the whole, so have you ever seen anything weird or unusual down here? It's always, you never know which way the conversation's going to go from there. But he was like, yeah, I saw this weird thing. Had my daughter with me in the truck, and he basically went on to tell me this story about this chupacabra that he saw, and his daughter saw it too. And it was a daytime roadside encounter. And he said it troubled him because of its sheer size, and it scared his daughter pretty bad because I guess his daughter was like 7 or 8. It upset her, but he was calling it a chupacabra. But whenever he really sat down and started describing it, he was describing a dog man. And I think a lot of dog men could easily be confused with that. They kind of got the lower back legs. Some of them have, like the lion's mane of fur, which almost makes it look like, their lower end of their body and their arms are not hairless, but almost hairless. And of course, a chupacabra, some of the chupacabra depictions, their heads kind of look canine anyway, depending on which chupacabra animal you're talking about. But yeah, I really do. I think there's a lot of these juvenile, dogmen down there that are probably being seen, and they're probably just referred to as chupacabra. And I think that's a pretty safe bet. But that's just one guy speculating over here. I'm a long way from Mexico, so. But yeah, good point.
Yeah, you are a pretty good distance. All right, I've got another question that wasn't in all caps that I caught from 903 Bulldog, and they want to know, has Brian had any reports around Ponka City or Tonkawa, Oklahoma? That's right at the Kansas border.
Yeah, yes. As a matter of fact, and if Bulldog, if you hit me up on Facebook Messenger, I'll send you links to the case files. Yes. I've got a case file from the Lamont area, which is just west of Tonkawa, of a family that the mother and daughter saw one of these creatures. There's been a couple of reports. The guy that I just interviewed, if you go to my YouTube, you'll see some of the interviews that I just did. I just recently did a couple of interviews, and this guy told me about a 2016 eyewitness account just south of Ponka City that he had. Um, let's see, if you go north into Kansas, there's been a few reports up and around Wichita and over north of Caney, Kansas, just across into the border. There's been several, but that area has spotted reports. But that seems to be there are no there are no clusters. But yeah, there's a lot of reports around Ponka and Tonkawa. Tonkawa's a pretty good Sasquatch place too. So's Ponka City. A lot of good habitat there.
You're just the man to ask about that. You would know.
Hmm.
All right. I've got a question for you from Rex. And Rex wants to know, could you point out the differences between dogmen and werewolves?
Well, that I struggle with that. That's um, I had somebody bring up something once, and if all dogmen were actually shapeshifters, it would go a long way to explaining why we've never caught up with them. And when I heard that being said, I was like, not sure I like the sound of that. But I don't know that I prescribe to all that. I'm still on the fence of this human lycanthropy thing, although you do hear whispers and rumors, and it's very troubling. But it seems to be, if you had to put your money in one way or the other, that would be probably the last place I would put my money. But the these werewolves supposedly are humans that change back and forth either at will or with the moon phase. Um, it seems like most of that is a Hollywood sensation, but at the same time, you've got these ancient traditional stories from Europe and from Native Americans of these shapeshifters and stuff like that. I'm not gonna ever dismiss it as total nonsense, but at the same time, it's one of those things. I do everything I can to be an evidence-based investigator, but I got no evidence for that. So it's really hard to say. I mean, I've never had anybody call in and tell me personally that they saw somebody um, turn into a werewolf. Now, I have had a couple of people that have come real close to telling me these things, but the end result was something different, something more like a rake or something like that. But and I don't know. It seems like to me that the lion's share of them are born dogmen and they stay a dogman their whole life. I've got a friend named Brandon who's Native American, and he told me a long time ago. He says there's three types of dogmen, according to his people. He says there's these natural born giant wolf like dogmen that basically are like giant dire wolves except bigger. Um, and he said that they're born and they're just a species and they're just really really shy and they stay away from humans. And he said, and then there's and they have hands, like raccoon type hands, and kind of almost human-looking torso. But he said that they're just a natural breeding animal, and they're just 100% flesh and blood. He said there's another one that is more of a spiritual animal that is like supernatural, and that kind of can move in and out of the spirit world. And but he said that that's a completely different animal, creature, whatever. And he said there's a third type, and he said that's the shapeshifters, the medicine men. He said almost always these medicine men are bad men that are using this Native American medicine for bad purposes. And he said that you can almost always spot one of these creatures, because if you look at it and you see that part of it is deformed or misshaped, he said that's a sign that it's a Native American medicine man that's shape shifting. He said sometimes, their head will be too big, or one of their legs will be kind of gimped up, or maybe one of their legs is too big or something like that. They'll just have something that's about them that's not right. And he said that almost every one of those shape-shifting medicine men, it'll always have something that just doesn't look right about the creature. And that's how you spot them. And from everything that I've learned so far moving forward, I've never found anything that really contradicts what Brandon told me. It just really just kind of validates it. It seems like everything that I run across, it seems to validate what he said. And I kind of stick with that. It's these creatures are going to go into one of three categories with me.
Wow, what a great answer. That was really thorough. I'm impressed. And before we move on with tonight's show, so that everyone knows, there is going to be another live stream tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the same time. Kim from episode 488 is going to come back on and tell us about an encounter that she had last weekend. And she just might have seen Ember's family. She's going to tell you all about what happened, and we hope you listen and tune in. Again, that's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow night, Friday. All right. Got another question for you, Brian, from C Phantom 009. And their question is, hi there. Any comments towards what role these beings such as dogmen played in the planet's ancient past? For instance, Egypt, god Anubis. Thank you.
Oh, it's actually kind of funny, because it seems like there's a higher level of documentation about dogmen in ancient history than there is Sasquatch, which I think the Sasquatch populations are greater, but the dogmen are talked about more in ancient lore. Of course, there's Anubis, and people want to talk about how it was just all fiction and whatever, but you know, whenever people say that, I'm always like, do you have any idea how much work goes into carving something into stone? I mean, this is not a comic book. These are not superheroes that they're drawing on the walls with chisels and stuff like that. These were probably real things that they were very serious about, and it just makes sense that it would be a real creature. Um, as I recall, I think Alexander the Great was reported to have captured two dogmen warriors, and he made them swear allegiance to him and fight for him, and understanding that he would spare their life. Now, of course, as we all know, Alexander the Great's reign kind of got cut short prematurely, and we really don't know what happened after that. But there's the Marco Polo story about him finding an island full of the creatures they called the cynocephaly. I mean, the history goes all the way back, and I think it's kind of fascinating because, I think they were more common back then. Um, there was a Greek philosopher or a Greek historian, and I can't remember his name now, but he was talking about a civilization of dogmen that lived over in the mountains by India. And he was saying that there was like 120,000 of them. So maybe their populations are dwindling. Um, that's usually what happens when, any other race or civilization hangs out with human beings too long. We usually end up killing them off. But, this stuff goes way back. I mean, it's fascinating. There's all these little snippets here and there. Um, there's what's the Catholic saint? Um, is it Saint Christopher? That was supposedly a dog-headed man. Is that right, Christopher? Vic?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. I'm having a moment here, but this stuff goes on and on and on. There's all these little you know tidbits, and it's just back then people were seeing these things, and we're still seeing them today. You know, I don't know if the fact that we are denying their existence at this point, I don't think that really looks good on our part. And it's almost like we've always known that they were there, and it was common knowledge. And it just now, all of a sudden, recently, in the last 200 years, we've just conveniently forgot that they exist. I don't, I don't understand that. But yeah, I think it goes all the way back.
I wouldn't be surprised if it does. So, yeah, that makes two of us.
Hmm.
All right, I've got a question for you from Lance. And Lance wants to know, why does our government cover up the existence of these creatures?
Oh, Lance is going to get me in trouble with this one. Um, Yeah, I get flack over this all the time. I understand that everybody wants disclosure. I get it. But the truth is, a person is smart, but people are stupid. And you get a bunch of people together and put them in, you know, a situation where they're confronting something that's scary. What do? They form a mob. They get their torches and their pitchforks, and they kill it. That's our nature. And so, to be honest, I think that the government hiding Sasquatch and Dogmen from us is actually a good thing. Um, I don't think we could handle it. Um, I really don't. I honestly believe that if the government came out and said, "Yeah, they're out there. We know they live in a couple of pockets out here, whatever," I mean, there would be an army of rednecks loading up in their pickup trucks with, a couple of cases of beer, and it's they're going to head to the woods, and they're going to start World War III. And I think it's a good thing that they're actually keeping it from us. They're not keeping it from me. I know. I mean, it's not a secret from me, but it's I don't know. I think it's better that the general public doesn't know. Now, if they were actually after us and they were hunting us and they were harvesting us for food on a regular basis, then I would say yes, the government has uh, a mandate to inform us and protect us and this, that, and the other. But that's not really the case. So, oh,
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it is by far and away best for the general public not to know about their existence. Look how we dealt with COVID, how there was this not really a panic, but look how things played out. I mean, I had a hard time getting my hands on toilet paper, Brian. That's not a good situation. I mean, what do you do when there's no TP in the house? You tell me, Brian, what am I supposed to do in a situation like that?
well, do like any old good old fashioned dog man does. Go out in the backyard and drag your ass in the grass.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's an option. A last
Mhm.
ditch option. I'd rather not have to explore, but you have to do what you have to do.
Chiggers are real. So
Yes, they are.
but yeah, the COVID thing. I mean, I don't want to dig in too deep for that, but it really did kind of teach us a lot of things, and so I'm at a point now where I don't really I'll never underestimate the stupidity of humans. I mean, look at us. We've basically been at war killing somebody for how long? I mean, an eternity, you know? I don't know. We're complicated, I guess.
Yes, we are. That and then some. All right, I've got another question for you from Fuzzy1Z, and they want to know. Well, the question was directed at me, but this isn't about me. This is about you. So I'm going to ask you, Brian. Their question is, what are the legends of Dogman origins?
Well, I actually did a video on that just recently. Um, I was fortunate enough to get to interview a Ponka Nation, First Nations tribal spiritual advisor. And he actually shared his tribe's story. And it's pretty interesting. If you want to hear that story, just go to my YouTube video. It'd probably be better off if you just hear him tell the story firsthand instead of getting hearsay from me. Knowing me, I'll probably mess something up. But, you know, I don't know that there's a whole lot of origin stories about where the Dogmen or where the Sasquatch really came from, as far as like traditional lore and, from across. Now, there may be some stories over in Europe that I'm not aware of, but it seems like to me most of the stories, traditional stories, revolve around lycanthropy and stuff like that. And I don't really put a heck of a lot of stock in that. I personally believe that they are a physical flesh and blood animal, both species, and they both have just been here a really long time. And if you really want to get technical, I believe that they're creations of the Most High God, and they've just been here forever. A lot of First Nations people will tell you that the Sasquatch people have been on this earth longer than we have, but nobody really talks a whole lot about where the Dogmen originally came from. So that I think personally, I think it's kind of a mystery.
You really have thought this through. Put a lot of good thought into this. I'm impressed. All right, Brian, I've got another question for you, and this one's from Toby McKimmy. And
Mhm.
Toby wants to know, why does the government cover up Dogmen attacks?
Well, he's right about the attack thing. It seems like there's a standard, SOP with these dogmen. If a human being does actually get attacked, or if they are touched, or they have some kind of physical, evidence or whatever about an attack, it seems like the government always does get involved, and they have a vested interest in keeping these stories at bay. I get it. People always ask me, it's like, if you ever got attacked by a Bigfoot and the men in black showed up, what would you do? I said, I'll tell you what I would do. I would tell them I'd be more than happy to keep my mouth shut for, 7 or 8 million. They can afford it. But I think that they need to keep it under wraps. And I think that there's so many more reasons than we haven't even thought about. You know, um, it's kind of like bouncing back to COVID. You know, we knew that a disease could break out. We knew that a lot of people could get sick and die. We knew these were possibilities. We didn't think we'd run out of toilet paper. We didn't think that they would finally come out with hand sanitizer that actually smelled good and didn't burn. You know, didn't dry your skin out. I mean, there was all these little knickknack things that came out of COVID that we never would have a million years seen coming, right? And I think it's the same thing with Dogman and Sasquatch. I think that if they was to come out in public, that there was another species out there, I think that there would be 1,000 little things that would change that we don't even have a clue. So I think it's probably is important, because even the government is probably not capable of predicting all the little things that would change when the general public's perception of the woods changes entirely overnight. There's a lot of factors, a lot of chess pieces involved in a situation like that. And so at the end of the day, the best thing to do is to keep the truck on the same path and to try to maintain what we've got, so that, because we know what we've got, and what we've got is safe, or at least it's not going to destroy the economy, right? So their job is to keep things trucking along in the same direction. And for the most part, I'm good with that, because I don't want to run out of toilet paper again.
Yeah, that makes two of us. Yeah, that's not a good scene at all. All right, I've got another question for you from Magnus. And Magnus wants to know, do dogmen target people with canines as pets?
Well, I don't. Maybe so. I mean, I've never really put it together. I know that it seems like dogs, domestic dogs, they act different. If you talk to eyewitnesses, it seems like that domestic dogs act differently around dogmen than they do Sasquatch. A lot of times they'll keep barking at Sasquatch when they really shouldn't. But like almost 95% of the time, from what I've seen, when a dogman comes around, all the dogs get real submissive, and they usually try to go crawl underneath the house or whatever, try to get out of there. I have heard some weird random stories about dogs wanting to hang out with dogmen, but I'm not so sure about the validity of those stories. But I think that they're just, I don't. I think that they're just, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how it would change the way that person, or that dogman, would interact with the human that has dogs. I mean, so many people have dogs. It's tough to filter out which reports involve people with dogs and which ones didn't. I don't know. That'd be a tough one, and it's a good thought though. And it's questions like that, when they get tabled, and when you actually sit down and start looking at it, that's when you start learning stuff. Because once a question like that enters your brain, from this point on, I'll be thinking about that. So maybe I'll have a better answer for that in a couple of years.
All right, there you go, Magnus. All right, I've got another question for you from Trail Wolf 4x4. And their question is, do you think the recent wildfires across North America will cause more sightings?
Well, yes, I do. Whether or not those sightings will get reported is a different story. Yeah, there's been a lot of wildfires, and now everybody has a cell phone in their pocket, and the cell phones are getting better and better cameras. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if something comes up from it. But they're going to be very elusive, and they're very fast, and I don't really expect to get much out of it. But I think that it could be pushing them further inland, towards the center of the United States. But could be doing the same thing with Sasquatch. I don't know. I've heard crazy stories though of, like, what do they call those firefighters that jump into fires or whatever, running into cryptid creatures. I've always been kind of fascinated by those stories, because when it's kind of hard to find cover when everything's on fire. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things that makes you think. It would create a hell of an opportunity for large amounts of animals, including cryptids, to be on the move, be in a hurry, and to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not very cautious, as far as like staying out of sight. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well said. Before I throw this next question at you there, Brian, please promote your channel. If anyone wants to listen to Red Dirt Cryptids, which of course I hope you do, it's a great channel, how can they find it?
Well, of course, we're on YouTube, Red Dirt Cryptid Investigations. And we're also, we're on Facebook. Facebook is kind of like the hub, it's where all the old people go, I guess is what my students tell me. But our Facebook group is kind of where everything's at. If you go to my Facebook group, in the featured section, you can find links to our website. You can find links to all my case files. All of my case files are public. There's an app that you can open up and you can have access to every case file. I've got like 360 case files, and you can just hit Control P print and just print them all if you want to. They don't really belong to me, they belong to the people. There's also, links to certain articles and a couple of other shows that I've done. I've been on Dogman Encounters before, so there's links to that kind of stuff in there where you can find us and watch us and learn about us, and of course we're on TikTok and Instagram, and hell, I'm even on Rumble now. So we're moving on. So, but that's where we're easy to find. But if you want to get a hold of me, the best way to do it is to get on Facebook and just hit me up on Messenger. I just got a notification that somebody wants to send me a message on Messenger while we're on this podcast. So that is by far, hands down, the best way to get a hold of me.
That does make it really easy.
Yeah.
And of course, so everyone listening knows, I'm going to post links to Brian's Facebook page and also a link to his channel on YouTube. And I'm just going to try and make it as easy as possible for you to just go to the description for tonight's show and click a link to go where you want to go to check out what this man does. So
Thank
keep
you.
that in mind. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. The next question is from Holly Stevens, and Holly wants to know, do you know how the Dogman, or do you know how Dogmen actually communicate with each other? Or do they?
Well, most of the time when you hear stories about people encountering packs of these creatures, you don't hear about them, you know, talking. Occasionally, you'll hear them making whistle noises, clicking noises, stuff like that. But those could be forms of communication. But it seems like to me it'd be a lot like, any other pack animals or whatever. It just seems like to me, and I know I'm stretching it, I'm really getting out there, but this mind speak thing, I mean, it just checks all the boxes. It kind of answers all the questions, you know what I mean? And so the longer that I am in this genre and the more scenarios that are put in front of me, the more mind speak just makes a lot more sense. I think they communicate using mind speak. I think occasionally they choose to communicate with us using mind speak. I personally think that we just turned it off. So I don't think I don't think supernatural. I don't think mind speak is supernatural, paranormal, or anything like that. I think it's just a gift that we don't have anymore, or at least 99% of us don't have anymore. So yeah, I buy into that.
You just might be right. All right, I've got another question for you from your boy Alpha X, and they want to know, have you heard about any dogman sightings in the Navajo reservation?
Oh man, now the Navajos over there. I know they've got them, but I think the general consensus over there is that they're not dogmen, that they're skinwalkers. You know, there's a super strong Native American presence out there, and from what I understand, there's a long, deeply seated, held fear of the skinwalkers over there. And I think that there may be some dogmen running around over there that are just natural born dogmen, that people naturally assume that they're skinwalkers or a medicine man. And so it's kind of hard to say which would be which. I watched one of the most fascinating videos I ever seen, that was involved a tribal law enforcement officer over there on the Navajo reservation, I believe. And he was interviewed. I guess him and his partner's specialty was dealing with cryptids and paranormal type stuff. And all I can say is just wow, you know, that guy and his stories. Can't remember his name now, but absolutely amazing. And I guess they have a ton of activity over there, and it's super common. But the weird thing is they will not talk about it a lot of times because they believe that it is one of these medicine men, and they believe that it could be somebody they know. And so they're like doubly scared. Not only are they scared of the creature, but they're scared that if they talk about it, they might be talking to that person that's doing that stuff. And so, you know, it's kind of like a compounded fear over there. So kind of that's some crazy stuff over there. Complicated. I think it gets real complicated.
Yeah, that is crazy stuff. They say you don't want to be walking around on the res at nighttime. Yeah, maybe there is something to that. I don't know.
I think all reservations have, you know, kind of a higher level of spiritual presence. Don't ask me why. I don't know. They just seem like they do.
Yeah, you just might be right about that. Well, I've got a question for you from Robin, and Robin wants to know, have there been any sightings in Fall Creek Falls, Tennessee? She says it's a 28,000 acre state park.
Well, I don't know exactly where that is. I did go to the Land Between the Lakes recently, and that was absolutely amazing. Um, and that's of course that place, that area there is known for dogman sightings, and of course the famous, I believe it was 82 or 84 dogman massacre over there. Um, I'm gonna say, yeah, there's a lot, but as far as knowing specific ones in that specific area, that is unfortunately way out of my area of expertise. So, but I know Tennessee and Kentucky and Georgia. There's a lot of them. I think the populations of them over there are pretty high, probably even comparable to Sasquatch populations like here in Oklahoma.
All right. I've got a question for you from Kate Smith, and Kate wants to know, why do some dogmen kill humans and some don't?
Mm. Well, I believe that there is this spiritual barrier, and I as crazy as it sounds, I think that they are not allowed to kill us by the Most High, you know, the Creator, God. I think that there's a spiritual boundary, but I believe that sometimes, you know, accidents happen or they cross that line out of desperation or something. And once you've done that, you know, it's kind of like, well, doesn't matter now, you know. Um, it's kind of like when you, I guess when you murder somebody, you know, the first one's the hardest, I guess. I don't know, and you know, the second one should theoretically be easier. And it's like doesn't really matter, because if you get caught, the punishment's going to be the same anyway. So the way I look at it, 99% of them are going to leave you alone. But there's that 1% that he's probably already been there and he's broke the rule. So at this point, it don't matter. And those are the ones that are dangerous. I think that's where a lot of our missing people go. Now, I think that, a large number of the missing people, the missing 411 people, I think that's just natural stuff where they just stepped off in a sinkhole or something like that, just slipped out of sight and, vanished and got, just died. And their remains just never got found. But, as far as like, people getting eaten by dogmen, man, you're talking about an extremely rare situation. And, I don't think it happens that often.
That makes two of us, but I'll tell you this. I really hope never to encounter a 1%er when it comes to Dogman. That wouldn't be good.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah, not good at all. All right, I've got a question for you from Renee Morricone. And Renee wants to know, where are these breeding programs done at?
Oh, well, I don't know. My wouldn't have a clue, flat out. Wouldn't even speculate a guess. Probably the most remote place that they can possibly find. Who knows? Underground. Underground seems to be the easiest way to contain stuff like that. But I haven't even heard any good rumors on that one. So, way above my pay grade.
Well, if you listen to enough shows, you're going to hear rumors about where you can find them. Exactly where you can find them.
Right.
I wouldn't put much stock into that, but you're going to hear it nonetheless. Yeah. All right. Looks like I have a comment instead of a question from Robin. She says, I wish we could just understand them, why they do what they do. And yeah, that makes two of us. All right. Yeah. Moving on, looking for the next question. This one is from A Paranormal Quest with Angie. And she wants to know, Andrew, do you think that dogmen use portals like Bigfoot?
Again, I'm going to refer to my own case files, right? I don't have any case files that involve a dogman stepping through a portal or disappearing. And usually when, you hear about somebody say, well, it went into the woods and it just vanished or whatnot. A lot of time I don't put a whole lot of stock in that, because I'm not saying that portals don't exist. Don't get me wrong. I believe that, in my personal opinion is I believe portals exist. I just, to different dimensions, or, like a portal to heaven, or but I think God controls that. And so I think that if something's coming through a portal, it has permission to come through the portal. I don't believe that, demons and other creatures and evil entities are allowed to come and go as they please. They're kept in check for a reason. And this traveling into our dimension is restricted, is what I personally believe. Otherwise, this would be hell on earth, living here with all these, evil spiritual entities running around. I don't know. That's the thought process that kind of keeps me going and makes me put, logic to it. It's the box that my brain puts it in. I'm not God. I don't have all the answers, and I don't know. But I have not yet had too many people reach out to me with stories about portals and stuff. Now, I'm ready to listen, and my mind has been changed before on certain things. So I do not dismiss that kind of stuff as nonsense. But when it comes to these stories about portals, it seems like most of the stories about portals, whether it be Sasquatch or Dogman, it seems like these stories are coming from podcasts and content creators that dabble in fiction. And when you start dabbling in fiction, that's a slippery slope. And I just don't I don't know that that's not just that the whole portal thing is not just fiction too. I just don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying, um, where's the evidence? That's all I'm saying. I'm not calling anybody a liar. I just, and for what it's worth, I'd kind of like to see that evidence. So it'd be some of the coolest things you ever seen. But maybe a lot of this portal stuff is, them camouflaging themselves, or some people call it cloaking. I do believe that they may be able to bend light and stuff like that. There's a natural precedence in nature for that kind of behavior. So yeah, I'm down for believing in that. But as far as just stepping into a portal, I don't know. I'm still kind of on the fence. Somebody want to take me out in the woods and show me, I'm all ears and eyes.
It is a lot to wrap your mind around, but like I said earlier, there are so many credible eyewitnesses who come forward and report witnessing that. So for me, it's really hard to discount that. I'm just not really sure what to think about that.
Yeah, you get a lot more of those than I do, I think.
Yeah, I get quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
I also get my fair share of messages like the one that came in not too long ago. Guy was complaining that he visited the Dogman and Encounter store. He wanted to buy a t-shirt, but he's complaining. He says, Vic, what's going on here? Or something like that. I wear a size 2XL, and I looked in your store, and all you carry are XXL t-shirts. If you start carrying 2XLs, then I'll buy a shirt from you. I don't know. I just don't know. Can't win.
Well, that is funny.
Just can't win. Anyway, I've got another question for you from Mahala, and her question is, has Brian talked with Pilates to compare the 411 disappearances?
No, I have not talked to him. He hasn't been down in my way for a while that I know of. But I have noticed, and I have taken note, that his missing persons map that everybody sees on the internet floating around, that's a pretty interesting map. And if you look at it, there's a couple of little hot spots down there in southeastern Oklahoma that I took note of. And one of them happens to appear to be kind of over there on the LaFleur County area. And there is there is a lot of people there. There's hiking trails there. There's a lot of woods there. But at the same time, that area is also known for really bad drug use and poverty, you know. And all I'm saying, and I'm not trying to pick on the people that live down there, but what I'm saying is, man, there's about 1,000 ways that somebody can just disappear down in southeastern Oklahoma. And just because you vanish, that doesn't mean that it was a cryptid. So I don't know. David Pilates does some pretty solid work, but I try to focus on my area and what I'm doing down here, and haven't really heard him talk a whole lot about. I haven't read any of his books, but I've watched his little movie, and I always pay attention when he comes on because I think he's got some stuff to offer. But As far as like my specific area, nope, never met the man. Um, and but maybe someday, maybe someday.
You never know. Just might happen.
Oh yeah.
All right, I've got a question for you from Chance Martin. And Chance wants to know, do you think that Sasquatch and Dogmen work together or barely coexist? Hello from Indiana.
From everything that I've seen and I've been told, yeah, I don't think that they, I don't think that's common. I think there's certain situations where they work together, but I think they know when the other one's in the area and they'll just avoid each other. Like I said, I think it's a resources thing. I don't, maybe there's a higher level of contact there, but it just kind of makes sense. You've got big predators in the area. Just go somewhere else. There's plenty of food to go around. But I don't think they run around buddy buddy. Although I have heard weird stories of people that believe that the dog men are like pets to the Sasquatch, but um, I think that may be coming from another fictional situation. It's kind of hard to make that call on some of them, but you hear people tell those stories every once in a while, but I'm not seeing the evidence. There was a Land Between the Lakes story that where this guy believed that this pack of dogmen was being commanded by a Sasquatch or two Sasquatches, and that guy was like super believable. Can't remember his name. He was like an ex-police officer, but him and another guy witnessed it. But you know, you hear one story and the guy's real believable, but and before you start changing your mind and shifting your mind towards that type of thinking, you need to hear more than just one or two stories about something like that before you really start believing it. So I'm still on the fence on that one.
I like the way you think. All right, I've got another question for you from Mystery Junkie. And they want to know, could dogmen be able to climb trees?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, especially the younger ones. We've had a lot. We've had several reports of them up in trees, moving around too. That's kind of creepy. But Sasquatch do that too. But yeah, I think even the larger dog men will take advantage of the trees. So yeah, I think they're pretty at home up there. So always keep your head on a swivel and don't forget to look up too.
That's good advice. All right. The next question is from Ernest Cordero, and Ernest wants to know, or he says, hello, Vic and Brian. What is the tallest dog man you've ever heard of?
Oh man, the probably I've heard stories of dogmen looking in windows that were 9 foot in the air. That's about as tall of a dogman story that I've heard from my area. Now you get outside of Oklahoma and you'll hear of them getting bigger than that. But to be honest with you, like 85% of the ones that you hear the stories about are 6 or 7 foot tall. So I don't think they get anywhere near as big as a Sasquatch, but every once in a while you'll hear about a really big one. Um, but most of them in my area, no bigger than like 9 foot tall.
All right. The next question is from Jay Money, and Jay wants to know, where do you think they originate from?
Well, that's a good question, and I mean you're talking about going back to prehistory there. I don't believe that they showed up in a certain area of the United States and migrated around. I think they've always been here. They've always been all over the planet. I'd be willing to bet you that they were here before the flood, in the pre-Diluvian times, and they survived the flood somehow. Who knows? They might have been on Noah's boat for all we know. Um, you could write a book on the animals that Noah doesn't mention, or that the Bible doesn't mention. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think they've always been here, and I think they have populated the earth just as long, or possibly even longer than we have. Just like the Sasquatch people, I don't think they originated in a certain area, or if they did, it predates um, it predates history, written history, by a long shot, probably.
All right. The next question is from a paranormal quest with Angie, and that question is, Brian Vick, do you think that the dogmen we have now are descendants from Anubis?
I do. I think that they are. It's been like a generational thing. I think it slowly moves down. I believe there's a breeding population. Um, Now, a lot of people, point out that Anubis was considered to be a god, and of course, people make the connection of the Nephilim thing there. And yeah, I mean, like that's another thing. My ears are open on that. I'm ready to listen. But um, I think that Anubis was possibly one of the, you know, I don't know, possibly one of the fallen ones, the Watchers, and later known as by many names. But could they be like a descendant from them? 1,000 generations later? Yeah, probably, probably. I believe it. Like I said, I mean they came from somewhere, and Anubis is probably one of the oldest documented dog-headed people around. So yeah, it just kind of makes sense and checks a lot of boxes.
What really throws me for a loop as far as the whole Anubis angle is almost every depiction of Anubis shows Anubis with hominid style legs, not
Yep.
legs of a digitigrade leg structure. So, yeah, there are some serious questions to be answered there. Don't have the answers for them, but there are questions. All
Yep.
right. The next question for you is from Wes Terry, and Wes wants to know, do you think they know your intentions as if one that is dominant or passive? As if you're one that is dominant or passive?
Well, it's pretty easy to say that when a human runs into a dog man, yeah, they're going to be passive. But I do believe that these creatures can pick up on, our intentions, I guess you could say. There's a lot of different ways. I mean, you could throw the mind speak thing in there. Maybe they're reading your mind, picking up on your intentions. A lot of people say that they can pick up on your energy vibrations, whether you're a good person or a bad person. Um, that's on the table too. Or maybe they're just really really good at reading body language. Body language is a really big deal, and people underestimate the ability to watch someone's body language and judge what they're going to do or whether they're lying or not. There's a lot of things to body language that we overlook a lot of times. So I would be willing to say that it could be a combination of all of them, but it's hard to say. I believe they can pick up on our intentions. For the record, I think Sasquatch can do it too.
And that puts us at quite the disadvantage. If they were malevolent, they would just really have us over a barrel. But thank goodness all the indicators, at least almost all the indicators, point towards them not being out to get us. Of course, there are some deviant ones, but as a
Yeah.
whole, it's obvious they're not looking to wipe us off the map. And yeah, thank goodness for that.
Hmm.
All right. Let's see. The next question would be from C Phantom 009. And he says, "Hi, Vic. Any comments towards what role may these beings, such as dogmen, have played? The planet's ancient, I guess he meant i.e. the planet's ancient past. For instance, Egypt, God Anubis. Thank you."
Yeah, that's well, of course, that's all going to be speculation, but you know, I'm kind of a little left field on all this, and when it, I'm basically a follower of Christ. Um, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus, and but I also, because I believe in what the Bible says, and I don't take everything that's in the Bible literally verbatim, word for word. I think there's interpretation that has to be involved. But yeah, I believe that when the Watchers were originally cast down, and God started punishing them, and then the Nephilim came around, and all of that stuff that you can watch 1,000 podcasts on. Um, I think during all that, these creatures, these Nephilim, and maybe even the original Watchers, but the children of the Watchers, they spread around the earth, and I think they came in different forms. I think some of them, were had the heads of different animals, and they were just different, and they took a lot of different forms, and I think a lot of them were gods, some of the original gods, and so I think it's entirely possible that Anubis was literally a Nephilim, a descendant of one of the original Fault Watchers that happened to have that particular genetic makeup, and he probably was worshipped as a god because he had godlike characteristics that he inherited from his angelic heritage. So, I mean, it's possible. There's nobody on Earth today that could prove me wrong. I mean, my answers, I guess, are as good as anybody else's. But everybody gets to have their opinion. I believe that there was a reason why they were worshipped as gods. If you could just stab them with a stick and they die, I mean, they wouldn't really be considered gods now, would they? They must have had something extra about them that set them apart, other than the fact that they had a dog's head. Um, because we know human nature. If it looks different than us, we kill it. Well, I'm going to guess they tried it and it didn't work, so they ended up worshiping it. But I don't know. We could have a heyday speculating on this, and I think it's a good, clean topic, and I think everybody gets to have their opinion, and everybody, I'm that's another one of those things. I'm more than happy to listen to what other people have to say about those things, because I think we can all learn a little bit. But unfortunately, all that information is lost, and we won't find out during our time on this earth.
That is a really tough question to answer. Really hard.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Got another question for you from Robin. And Robin wants to know, Brian, is it possible to communicate with dogmen in any way to gain understanding?
I hope someday I might get an opportunity to find out. Um, I've heard of people communicating with them, and I think it's possible. Um, I think the problem, it's kind of like, it's kind of similar to an ugly guy trying to talk to a really pretty girl. You know, the really pretty girl has absolutely no reason to talk to the really ugly guy. She's not going to get anything out of it. And I think we're in the same situation with them. why would they share what they know with us? Why would they obviously know things that we don't know. They have secrets that we're not privy to. Why would they communicate with us? What are they going to get out of it? They sit around, they watch us, they know what we're up to. I mean, they're not going to get anything out of us or to communicate with us. It's just going to be a one-sided conversation. So getting one of them to open up and communicate with you would truly be a rare thing, especially in a longer conversation. But man, that sure would be cool. And I would love to be put in a situation where I might be able to open up a line of communication. But at the same time, I think you're going to have to be careful, because they're not going to want to give out information that's going to be harmful to their species. They got to protect their own. So I don't know. But yeah, I would love to be in a situation where I could attempt to communicate with them. That's always been kind of a deep, dark, hidden goal of mine. So, yeah.
One thing's for sure, it definitely wouldn't be a boring conversation, would it?
No, that would be cool. You think of 1,000 questions to ask, but yeah, like I said, where's their motivation to have that conversation? I don't think
Yeah,
there is much. Yeah.
good point. That's a good point. All right, got a question for you from Patrick Reagan. And Patrick wants to know, besides sending messages, are dogmen able to have telepathic conversations with someone?
Yeah, like I was saying, the guy that I interviewed from Ponka City, he claimed that he had communications with them, and he was, talking back and forth with them in his mind in a meditative state. Um, and I think the meditative state is one of the key things to this mind speak and the communication thing. You know, so often people are so busy and their minds are always racing and they never slow down, you know, and they never take time to just kind of quiet their mind. One of the most powerful Bible verses in the Bible is "Be still and know that I am God." And the key word is that the is be still. You know, sit down, shut up, take a minute, reflect, be quiet, concentrate, pray. However you want to look at it, but you gotta relax a little bit, and that's not something we're real good at nowadays. Everybody's got everything going, 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 going. Busy, 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 busy. And if we do have a minute to spare, what are we doing? We're on our phone and we're playing with this and we're watching that. We're constantly being stimulated in our brain. We never have any downtime where we just turn it off and unwind and unplug, you know. And so we were distant from the ability, meditative type practices before cell phones. And we're probably about as far as we've ever been at this point in our civilization. I use the word civilization, with a little sneer in my tone. But yeah, we're really getting away from that. And so I think it's getting harder and harder and harder to communicate with us that way. And for the sad part is, I think it's making it harder and harder and harder for us to have a better relationship with the Lord too. So we're losing on both ends.
Yeah, that we are. It's hard to argue that point. Well, it's 8 till 11 Eastern time. I'm going to throw one more question at you here, Brian, before we get out of here. But yeah, before I do, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and doing this. This is a
All right.
blast.
It is fun. I've had some pretty left field questions, but hey, they keep me honest. I like it.
Yes, I've been reading some of the questions. I've been wondering, okay, how's he going to answer this one? That's a tough question. Well, this is a tough question, but you've been doing really well. I'm really impressed. All right, the last question for you, and it's a pretty good one too, is from Baby Girl, Bring Back Zack Snyder, and she wants to know, do dogmen run with wolf packs?
I've heard stories of that. I've heard stories of them running with coyotes and having a relationship with coyote packs. And man, that'd be something that'd be really tough to prove. But every once in a while, you'll hear stories of them having, these other canine varieties, and even stories of domestic dogs that will run with them. And I don't really, I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, it could be possible. Now, if times got tough, they could always eat them. But it's it's kind of one of those things. It's yeah, I know. Do I think it happens a lot? No, mainly because there's not a whole lot of wolves, especially in this area. But I have heard the coyote stories. Them running with coyotes, and there's been people that have reported, and gotten audio recordings of what could be a dog man, and of course, the coyotes will chime in sometimes with them too. I was out at Canton Lake one time, probably 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and we were all just me and some of my friends were sitting around a campfire, and it'd been dark for a couple of hours, and we just heard this deep, loud, powerful howl that was coming from the north, and we immediately knew that this was not a normal howl. But about 2 or 3 seconds into it, about the time your ears perk up and you're like, whoa, whoa, this is different. About that time, here comes all these coyotes chiming in, and and drowning out the sound and garbling it up, and of course we're all looking at each other like, we just heard something, didn't we? But it would have been nice if the coyotes wouldn't have. But I thought it was funny that the coyotes were comfortable with chiming in with that creature, because I was pretty confident that we were actually hearing something larger there, and still am still confident that that's what we were hearing. Wish I had an audio recorder running on that, but like I said, the coyotes are real bad about drowning that stuff out. They'll do that with Sasquatch calls too, but it's I don't know. It seems like they have some kind of relationship, but like, not all canines get along like that. Coyotes and foxes are not friendly at all. As a matter of fact, coyotes will kill foxes. So, but then again, I don't know that a fox is 100% canine. I'd have to look into that one. I don't know, but yeah, I'd totally buy into that. But I don't have any evidence.
When you consider the fact that they definitely do run with coyote packs, it does make you wonder if sometimes they do run with packs of wolves. And if they don't, it makes you wonder, okay, why do they run with coyote packs but not wolf packs? It's not like they're in any kind of a danger with a pack of wolves. They can defend themselves against any pack of wolves. So if they don't run with them, then why not? But then again, as you know, there are so many questions about these guys that we're probably never going to know. But having said that, I can't thank you enough for coming on and answering all these questions, Brian. I really appreciate it. And like I said, this has been so much fun.
Oh yeah, it's a good time. I appreciate you having me on. Anytime, just to holler at me. It's a good time. This is the way I'd just assume spend my time, is talking about Dogman, and tabling good ideas and bouncing ideas back and forth. And there's nothing like a bunch of random questions to keep us honest, right?
That's right. Yeah, there have been some really good questions tonight. And of course, you did a very good job answering these questions. Like I said, some of these questions were almost borderline impossible to answer, but you just did such a good job answering them. I'm really impressed. And also, too, to all the listeners and the people in the live chat, I can't thank you enough for listening to the show, for supporting the show, most importantly, for supporting the eyewitnesses while you do. I really appreciate it so much. And this is all behind the scenes because in most cases, the eyewitnesses wouldn't have a chance to thank you, but understand they most definitely do appreciate it as well. So, yeah, don't lose sight of that fact. Well, one last thing before we get out of here. If you have a Dogman encounter that you'd like to speak with me about, it doesn't matter if you don't want to be a guest on this show or not. I'm easy to reach. All you would need to do is just go to dogmanencounters.com, submit a report. And if you do that, then yeah, by all means, I'll schedule a conversation with you, and that way we can find out what's going on with your experience or experiences, and we can take it from there. If you'd like to reach Brian left some contact info, but can you give us that contact info one more time before we get out of here?
The best way to get a hold of me is just to go to find my Red Dirt Cryptids Facebook page and just look me up. I'm one of the admins. My name's Brian Terrell. And just shoot me a message on Facebook Messenger.
All right, that makes it easy. And like I said, I'll have the link for that in the description for tonight's show. That'll make it really easy. But thanks again so much for your time, Brian. As always, if you only knew how many questions I didn't have time to get to, I don't know what you would think. I think I got to half of the questions, but yeah.
Cool.
That's for another day if you ever come back. But yeah, thanks again so much for your time and have a great night.
See ya.
Thanks.